The story of the woman that chanced upon a portal to another dimension in the stone forest in Peru. If you like camping, you might want to mind where you explore when you are spending time in the forest, or you may find yourself in a different universe. This is what happened to a group of women camping on a plateau named Marcahuasi in Peru. First off, this location is popular for its huge granite rocks that are thought to resemble human faces, animals, and religious symbols. Many have supposed that these shapes were created by pre-Columbian civilizations, but in fact, archaeologists have stated that the curious shapes of the rocks are naturally occurring. How creepy is that? Because of these strange stone formations, the area is sometimes called the Stone Forest. A doctor described treating an anonymous patient who became paralyzed after an encounter in the forest. She entered the ancient stone forest with some friends late at night and were lured by strange music to a small torch-lit cabin. Through the window of the cabin, they saw people dancing inside. She felt a sudden sensation of cold and decided to stick her head through an open door and noticed the people inside were dressed in 17th century fashion. She was quickly pulled back, but the half of her body that entered through the door became paralyzed. The doctor said after conducting many tests, he and his colleagues had to dismiss the case as an unknown affliction. The patient was prescribed regular physical therapy at Lima's National Hospital in the hope that it would help her paralysis without further attempting to explain the cause. The doctor claims partial entry of the woman into the anomalous zone to produce a change in the energy flow existing in her nervous system. It seems the woman experienced a time slip and the distortion led to a physical injury. Carol Chase McElhenney. Another peculiar account of interdimensional shift was narrated by a woman named Carol Chase McElhenney. Back in March 2006, she was driving from her home in San Bernardino to the sheepdog trials in Perris, California with her dog. Topping a hill, she noticed an exit sign to nearby Riverside. Her family had historic roots in the city dating back to the 1800s. Her grandparents were buried in the town's local cemetery. Her aunt and grandmother had homes there, and Carol herself had been a resident for a while after college. She thought it would be fun to visit old familiar places on her way. As soon as she had this thought, she suddenly smelled a whiff of cigar smoke in her car, especially after the smell reminded her of her grandfather who had passed away when she was a child. She planned to go to the cemetery. Carol drove to Paris, checked into a motel, and after the first sheepdog trial ended, nostalgia took over and dragged her back to Riverside. She stopped at the first cemetery, realizing something was out of place. She was unable to find her childhood home or the homes of her relatives. She didn't recognize any of the houses, but the numbers were still correct. The cemetery where her grandparents were buried was gone, and in its place was a fenced lot full of overgrown weed. She drove around trying to find anything familiar but had no luck. She did recognize the Riverside City College and Central Middle School, but when she reached the University Avenue, she saw some frightening-looking people and got out of there as fast as she could. Afterwards, she looked for Mission Inn and couldn't find it either. Carol thought she had landed in a different dimension in which the happy town of Riverside she grew up in was a shady little place. She drove to the street where her grandmother and aunt's house was, but both were gone. In place of her grandmother's large Tudor home with a towering eucalyptus in front, there were newer ranch-style homes with bushes in the neighborhood. Even the house Carol lived in was gone. The place looked run down with scary people and a whole lot of graffiti. Everything she knew was gone: the banks, restaurants, insurance companies, everything. She was afraid to stop and ask for directions, so after a couple of hours of roaming in Riverside, she went back to Paris, where things were totally normal. A few years later, when Carol's father died, she returned to Riverside for his funeral and found the town reverted back to normal, just like she knew it from childhood. Everything was back: her grandmother's home, her aunt's home, the Mission Inn, and the cemetery, and she never encountered the alternate version of her beloved town again. Some people won't do a thing until they can find scientists that support it. This is why number 8 is special, because it was supported by one of the most brilliant scientists ever. Stephen Hawking was a beloved, famous scientist who proposed many theories. One of them was that black holes are portals to other universes. Black holes are these terrifying objects in space that swallow everything they come in contact with. They are the legends nightmares are made from. However, if you are brave enough to explore, Hawking claims you will find yourself in an alternate universe if you jump into a black hole. Who knows, you might like it there. So instead of destroying everything that goes near them, we might not need to be so afraid of black holes, according to a paper he published with colleagues Andrew Strominger, a professor of physics at Harvard University, and Malcolm Perry, a professor of theoretical physics at Cambridge University. He said during a speech, black holes are not the eternal prisons they were once thought. If you feel you are trapped in a black hole, don't give up. There is a way out. That may sound like motivational words, but Hawking was saying you come out into a different universe at the other end. However, before you jump into a black hole, Hawking said you might not be able to find your way back from the alternate universe. It is a one-way trip. Why is that? Well, if it is possible to destroy information, then it's possible to speculate that the past might not exist at all. Black holes would be able to delete parts of the past, and as Hawking said, it's the past that tells us who we are. Without it, we lose our identity. So you will end up not knowing a thing about your past life, which will prevent you from coming back.